So I'm going to talk about understanding user needs. I mean, it's a very broad topic, to be honest, but I'm going to try and share from my personal experience, how do you actually break down user behavior and user needs, and how do you understand them, how do you make sense of them, how do you find those insights and actually action them, and especially in the time that we're living today, with AI being one of an integral part of our product development cycle, and also it's an integral part of our life today, right? So how do we use AI to sort of rapidly scale those findings and insights and action them in real time? So before we get started, I mean, why are we all here, right? Why do we attend conferences and events like Tech in Asia? Or why do we listen to founder interviews? Why do we read case studies? I think and I believe we are all trying to find the answer to this one elusive question is, why some startups succeed and why majority of them fail, and what's the secret sauce? Anybody in the room wants to take a guess? What's the secret sauce that makes some startups succeed and others fail? Anyone? One word answers? No? Go ahead. Sorry? Product market fit, yes, okay. Anyone else? Okay, so yeah, product is one of them, and then you might hear people talk about the team. Like if the team is great, your startup will succeed. You will talk about, the market itself. Are you working? Are you selling your product in Indonesia? Are you selling for Asia? Are you selling in the US? The market can define whether you succeed or fail. Access to capital can define whether you succeed or fail. But I was having the same conversation a few weeks ago with someone, and that person mentioned this to me as the secret sauce why startups succeed, 10,000 hours. And that got me thinking, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the theory of 10,000 hours. Are you guys familiar with 10,000 hours? Yes, yes, I see a few nods. So let me quickly summarize. So 10,000 hours is a theory which is commonly used and attributed to the creatives and the artist industry, which pretty much says that if you spend long enough honing your art, working on your craft, at some point you start getting better at it, and once you reach the threshold of 10,000 hours, you sort of start getting the best at what you do, right? And that got me thinking, and I was wondering, that could be true in cases of startups and products as well, but not entirely, and which is why I think the answer to this question is 10,000 iterations. Why iterations? Because iterations is sort of the fundamental thing that helps you find what your user needs, what your user actually requires. It helps you understand the problem statement, and it helps you build a product such a way which head-on takes on the problem and solves it. And which is why I strongly believe that 10,000 iterations is the secret sauce, and it's one of the fundamental, fundamental topics which defines why startups succeed and why many other fails. I'm sure by this point you guys are wondering, like, who's this guy talking about startups and success and failure? Honestly, I wouldn't say that I am the best to preach about this topic, but I'm just going to share some of my personal learnings. I'm Abhi, and I'm the founder of JellyBean.ai. For the last decade or so, I have been working with early stage startups and helping them with growth, operations, and marketing. And now I'm building JellyBean.ai, which is a voice AI platform, and we work with enterprises across Asia to build and deploy AI agents on voice and chat interfaces. So we primarily divide our agents across three main verticals: convert, support, and scale. And some of the early use cases that we are seeing with our clients is customer support, inbound, outbound sales, and honestly, the use cases are vast. As long as you're able to automate any of the chat and voice operations within your organization and workflows, we can sort of solve for that. So yeah, so that's me. But how did we get here with JellyBean, if you ask, right? Because that's what this whole session is about. Like, how did we get here? And I want to share that with you because it goes back to the same topic which I mentioned, 10,000 iterations. We have done our fair share of 10,000 iterations, and like most of our builders and product engineers and entrepreneurs here, it's all about finding the right product market fit that we heard earlier. It's all about finding the right problem to solve for, and it's all about doing multiple iterations to find find the right problem, the right solution, and the right target audience to sell that solution to. And our journey with JellyBean, of course, wasn't as straightforward as well, like with any other product development or any other startups out there. And internally, we follow something, sort of a process, which looks like this. And it's nothing fancy, honestly. But what's critical here is the stage that you do each of these steps, right? You do not build until you have a solid idea, you have tested the idea, and you have sort of validated the idea. And you go to build only once you are, you're seeing positive enough indications from your users that this is a solution that they need and this is a solution that they're willing to pay for. So we aggressively follow this internally at our teams. And where we are today is a journey of multiple iterations, like I said, and we are somewhere there, and we are seeing a lot of positive feedback from our customers, and which is why I'm confident of sharing that with you, because I sort of strongly believe that this works. And any product development, like you all know, is never linear, right? It's like the traffic in Jakarta, where you start from point A, then you see that, oh, there's a demonstration, there is traffic, there's something else, and you pivot until you find the fastest way to get to where you want to get to. So it's pretty similar to that, where you find the right problem statement, the right team, and the right solution to solve that problem. And sometimes success for any product or startup comes from one killer feature, and there are multiple examples, and sometimes it takes a complete pivot, right? In our case, for example, if I want to share, our journey to build our current voice AI platform started with, number one, the first version of a product looked like DAW software for musicians, which is digital audio workstations, which is used for audio editing and music engineering and stuff like that. That was the first version of a product. The second version of a product was an audio asset generator for video games, where we helped game developers to sort of fast track the entire product development cycle, especially the creative workflows of those. And the current version of a product, again, based on the same fundamental infrastructure, but a completely different idea, a completely different industry, and completely different use cases, which is voice AI. So similar to our case, it's always about iterating multiple times until you find the right problem to solve and the right solution for the right audiences. And like I mentioned, it's always about building before, validating before you build, because building a product is one of the most resource-intensive exercise for any startup and any team, right? Because it not only takes human resources, it also takes your capital, it takes time, effort, money, and all of that stuff. So you never go to building without validating. And you might be wondering, what's the difference between validating, testing, and idea, right? Idea is pretty simple. You have an idea, you go with it, and you figure out how to test it. And when I say test it, you are trying to understand, is there a need for this problem? Does this problem actually exist? Or is it something that you just made up in your head? Or is just you or maybe 5 other people in the world who face it, and it's not a big enough problem? So the second step is to test it, and validation is, before you build, can you understand and figure out if people are willing to pay for something like this or not? Is it a big enough problem? Does it solve a problem for an enterprise or for any other startup or an individual which can fundamentally make their lives better? That's the sort of validating. And of course, how do you validate before the product? Because as product builders, I had the same problem, right? I built multiple products, and then I'll take that product to somebody else to only hear a no at the end, right? So how can you validate before building? There are multiple ways to do that. Some of the obvious ones that a lot of people do is, number one, you build a landing page, you put a sort of a clickbait, and you ask people to submit their details as an interest. If you get enough interest from people, then yes, that's a solid indication that it's a valid enough problem, right? Second easiest thing to do is just talk to people. If you're here at conferences like these, just talk to people and understand, are they willing to pay for a solution like this or not? And get more in-depth understanding of the problem, and your customer is sort of validating an idea before you start building. And once you see enough positive indicators is only when you go to build. And applying first principles to understand user needs is the key. And it goes back to the same point that I made earlier, which is iterations, 10,000 iterations. Now, as product builders, it's always a tussle between intuition and reality. So what do we mean by that? So intuition is often, like, for example, as a founder myself, I sometimes have a gut feeling that, okay, this is the problem that I should be solving. And sometimes we get so caught up in that intuition that we lose touch with reality, and that's where the problem starts. Because it always has to be a push and pull sort of a balance between intuition and reality for any of the product teams or entrepreneurs or founders to build successful products. Otherwise, it's gonna fail. Like for example, let's look at example number 3, right? Most users. So as a founder at one of the fintech startups in Indonesia that I was consulting with, they believed that they had an amazing user onboarding journey. Users download the app, they have step 2 to step 5, and then they get access to the app, right? That's what the product team believed, that's what the founders believed. But the reality was 40% of the people dropped off on step 2. And why? And if you look at data, it's like, okay, you can make guesses, you can guesstimate, okay, this could be the reason. But the actual reason was the step 2 was the step which had a lot of friction, right? And the product team did not account for that in advance. So the step 2 was basically for users to upload a document on the app to sort of validate their identity. And what we realized was these documents were never handy on the user's devices. So they'll drop off at this point. Even if they're interested to continue, they'll drop off at this point. So that's what I mean to say when I say intuition versus reality. Sometimes intuition says this is the best possible solution. But if you don't look at the reality and the results on ground, you might be misguided. And which is why intuition and reality sort of has to go hand in hand, where a lot of new ideas are sparked by intuition, where you listen to your gut feeling and you chase it. But your road to success only comes when you're in touch with reality and you know what your actual users need and want. So that's intuition versus reality. And especially with AI in today's time and world, most of us, I'm assuming, most of us use GPT and Gemini and all the other platforms out there to sort of write most of our code. And when in a time like this, product development has become so democratized that anyone with a great idea can build a product, which is why one of the biggest moats in today's time for product teams is actually user reality. And how well do you understand the user? How well do you understand the problem? And then mapping your product development to address that. That's the key skill in today's time and day, because just building product and just knowing how to write code is not good enough anymore, which is why I strongly believe this gap that we see between intuition and reality can be very easily bridged with AI. And I often hear this argument where, AI can be used by, say, large enterprises where they have a lot of data, where you have a lot of information that you want to sort of filter through and find insights from, right? But that's not entirely true. Even for early stage startups like us, we use AI extensively in our systems, not just to do research, not just to brainstorm ideas, but also to sort of synthesize situations. And we test out scenarios, and then we find results that we actually want to build with. It's not exactly reality, but it gives you a sense of reality before you actually go and get like 1 million users on your platform. So that's the most exciting time that's great for product builders like ourselves in this room to be building in this time, where it's of course about building a good product, but it's also about understanding the user need at the center of it. Okay. Let me catch a breath. Any questions in the room so far? Because I've done a lot of talking, and I understand we are just waiting for the lunch break to kick in. Any questions in the room so far? Yes, please.
Hi, Abby. My name is Mori. Thank you for sharing the experience with us. So I want to ask about the 10,000 iteration. I think it's too much, and maybe it takes a lot of times. So I want to know about your opinion. How long does it take to try one iteration? I mean, you test the one idea and then fail, and then you pivot again. How long does you could do it? I mean, when I try to solve my idea, I already developed the prototype and then testing to the users. And there is nobody people who use my product, and then some of my friends say, you maybe not try long enough, wait enough, but how long does the proper time to wait? Thank you.
Okay, so honestly, 10,000 iterations is just a broad number, right? It doesn't mean exactly 10,000 iterations. It's until you find the right problem you want to solve. But I think the answer to your question lies in your question itself. You said you build prototype and then you go to your clients to hear or no. You don't need to build a prototype to go to a client or to go to a customer, right? So which is why I mentioned earlier that you have to always follow the cycle of testing and validating before building, because that saves you a lot of time. So you're not building for like 3 months and then going to meet a client and then they say no. right? Because that's where a lot of founders fail, including myself. Because we spend a lot of time and energy on building products and not listening to what our customer actually wants and needs. So my understanding to that is there is no definite answer to that question, like where how long do we try? It totally depends on how confident you are, and it depends on how you're built, right? Because some founders can take a lot of risk, some founders can take like only a little bit of risk. So it totally depends on your risk appetite and what you want to achieve in life. Totally depends on that. There is no definite answer to that, but the only answer that I would want to give you is it's always user first, it's always testing and validating before building. Yeah, great question, by the way. Thank you. Anyone else? No? Yeah, please. The last row there. No? Okay, it's fine. Cool. So we'll move on. So the next, okay, sure.
Hello. Yes. Hi. I just like to ask about because we do softwares, so usually startup or something like that, they usually want perfect features, perfect things, but along the way, they keep on thinking, oh, okay, this is the initial, but then they add on and add on all those features to make it like a perfect one, and they would not release, you know, what they have right now to see what's the market and how it is that they react. How do you convince these people, or I mean you know, the startup founders and everything like that, to show that you just need to release first and see how it is, but they're still not convinced about that because they have to get investors to proven, right, this product. So what is your view on that?
Okay, great question again. So, like you said, right, so building features is not equal to building product, right? A product solves a problem. Features make solving that problem fun, right? So I'm not sure, what kind of product do you build? Like, what software do you do?
Sorry, pardon me?
What software do you build? Like,
actually, we're doing dating apps right now.
Dating apps?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. So, I mean, that might be one of the outliers because your product is such that you want to, get more people interested in your product, right? You're not really solving a problem. You're sort of making dating fun and, finding people, making easier, right? But say, let's take something a little bit more traditional in terms of a problem statement. So if you look at any problem, you can break it down into bare bones. And it goes back to the same point that I made earlier about choosing first principles to break down problems and understanding what the actual core problem is. So let's talk about like payment gateways and payment solutions, right? The core of the problem today for everyone in Indonesia, across Asia, is just making the transaction happen without any friction, right? It does not matter. So we know already in Indonesia, most 95% of our transactions happen through virtual wallet, right? Bank transfers or GoPay transfers and stuff like that. Doesn't matter if you have 10 other different payment methods onto your payment gateway or not. As long as you have one method, which majority of our users use, that's solving a problem. Rest everything is noise, right? So if you're able to think about any problem statement in that sense, where you break it down into the bare bones and into the core of what the problem actually solves, is the same thing. Like in our case with JellyBean, what we're trying to solve is we are helping enterprises reduce costs and increase efficiency. Right? That's the core, the vision that we have to help our customers reduce costs and increase efficiency. And it does not matter if we have a fancy dashboard that gives them, regular updates about what's happening, how many agents are live. It doesn't matter. As long as they're able to see significant impact on their P&L, where they have seen that the customer number onboarding has increased, but the cost for customer support has gone down. That's the core problem we are trying to solve. So I think it always goes back to the same thing. Follow first principles, break down your problem into what the core of your problem is. And when you talk to your investors, your founders, everybody follows the same theory, right? No one follows something else. So it's all about that. But the game changes once you start growing into a bigger startup where you're trying to acquire more users, you're trying to build more team, you're trying to like just scale up from there. Then your algorithm changes, right? Then you want to just build features not for the sake of building features, but also to experiment in new ideas. Like what changes when you do this one feature versus the other feature, and then you retain those features, and then you find the winning feature, which can be actually turned into a sub-product later on. So when you're scaling up, the problem statements are different, but when you're early stage startup, it's just breaking breaking the problem down to bare bones and what the core of your problem is and what the actual pain point is. Rest everything sort of takes care of itself. Yeah. Okay, cool. So moving on. So at JellyBean, we follow something called an AI loop, which helps us understand the data that flows in, helps us gain insights, and also helps us with some predictions that can, prepare us and our teams in advance before we actually face those situations. So number one, and these are sort of more practical. So I'm showing some of the tools that we use as an early stage startup. These tools can look very different for different stages of the company, but the fundamentals remain the same, right? Number one is data, where it's very important if you have a product that you're capturing every single user action, every single conversation, whether it's through your customer support, whether it's through your ticketing system on Freshdesk or any of that sort. Every single conversation and feedback gets recorded in the right place at the right time. So, for example, if you have an app, it's important that you look at your app reviews, right? If you have a consumer tech product like your dating app, it's very important that you hear on social media. You have social listening tools to understand what people are talking about your product. It's very important to get all of that data in, because that leads to the next step, which is how do you make sense of that data? And how do you collect the data? So at JellyBean right now, we use a very basic stack, which includes Google Analytics and Firebase, where we basically track every single user journey. We track every single user behavior metric. And then we use Hotjar for our heat maps and also to record events and understand sentiment of each user journey. And then we also segment them so that it can be actually ready to use for the AI tools. So the step two is, how do you make sense of the data that you have captured? Because once you widen the pool of your data, you're not only looking at your landing page, but you're also looking at all the multiple touch points that user interacts with you. Then you have a large data set, and it's important that you stream them in the right way to get insights out of that, right? So insights are, with human eye, we can basically look at insights on the overall overview, but with AI, we can actually go deep and find hidden correlations and causations to find problems and find opportunities that you can do, the features you can build, and the optimizations that you can do on your product. So internally, what we do, we are based on Vertex AI. So we run clustering to find behavioral patterns through Vertex AI, and then we use OpenAI API to basically query in natural language. So anybody from the team doesn't have to have access to different places. They have access to this one chat, sort of a GPT-like dashboard, where they can query in real time and find insights about who's using the app in today's time, what's going on in so-and-so region, right? Like we can find insights based on gender. We can find insights based on age. Any metric that you can think of can be sort of built into finding insights, as long as you have the data present on step one. And then the last step that we do is prediction. So of course you have the data, you found the insights, you've corrected this, you have an action plan, but how do you predict that even before that happens, right? So how do you anticipate user needs? Like, how can you anticipate a user who comes from say metro cities in Indonesia, is between the age range of like 18 to 24. How do you anticipate that the step one of his user journey will actually be step two of the same user in a different scenario, right? Like, how do you build those personas? How do you predict that behavior becomes very important. And internally right now what we use is, again, the Google ecosystem of Vertex AI, where we use custom predictive models using, again, our data and all the insights that we find. And then we use GPT fine-tuned models to, again, detect frequently emerging requests and complaints. So it, again, goes back to making sure that you have all the user touch points, whether it's your Freshdesk where people are raising complaints, whether it's your social listening platforms where users are talking about whether good or bad, and you have all of these data and insights into your system to be able to predict what the next steps could look like. So that's what our stack looks like. But I think I would like to break it down for you guys today, in the sense, let's pick a common industry, let's pick a very basic use case, and we can apply the same thing there. So let's say e-commerce, and let's talk about the problem of cart abandonment, right? That's one of the biggest problems that most of the e-commerce D2C brands face today. Like, a lot of users come to the platform, they add the product to the cart, but they don't really check out what the reasons could be. So that becomes a problem statement. In terms of data, the current data platforms that we have, it'll probably, like, say, Google Analytics or Firebase, it'll probably show you where users are dropping off. It'll never show you why they are dropping off. Like, it's up to you to make sense of why. You would probably say it could be, oh, their network was bad, right? Or their device is old, it doesn't support our website. Or you could say they didn't find the right payment method. Or you could say we don't ship to that address, or any of those reasons, right? But those are all guesstimates. Those are not definite answers. That's where this model comes into play, where you go to the next step of insights, where you can feed all of this information. You can feed information about your landing page data. You can feed information about all your customer support tickets, your app reviews, your Play Store reviews, and all of those things. And then you drive insights from it. And when you find insights through that system, you will find out very interesting things where it was never about the network, it was never about the pricing, it was about the return policy. Because users are asking the same question on WhatsApp, on Freshdesk, through the customer support executives to find answers. It's about the return policy, so users don't feel comfortable buying the product on the last step of your purchase journey because they find out there is no returns possible, right? So users drop off at that point. So once you have that insight, what can you do to action it? What can you do to improve your cart abandonment rate, right? Simple, you put a banner which clearly dictates what your policy is and why. And chances are that your percentage of drop-offs will reduce significantly from there on. It's very important to be transparent with your users, but only if you know what the user wants to hear is when you can tell them that, right? And this system gives you that information. And then you can go a step further and figure out what could be other possible cart abandonment issues in the future based on this user behavior that you've already identified. So once you know that your users want to know details, information upfront, they need transparency, they need information about the product, the quality and stuff like that, then you can predict 10 different scenarios and address each of those as preemptive, in a preemptive way, so that it doesn't become a problem. It's a future problem that you're trying to solve today, or sort of you're preempting that this could happen and it would impact your business, and you're doing that today. So that's the beauty of AI models, which can help you not just digest data, not just find insights, but also build predictive models to do that. And of course, with AI, I think one of the biggest topics that we hear about, there are two schools of thought, right? One school of thought is AI is amazing, it's the next best thing that's happened to mankind and stuff like that. But then there's the opposite school of thought, which says, oh, AI is not, you can't depend on it. It hallucinates. It's not responsible, like multiple other school of thoughts, right? And unfortunately, it's true in today's date and time, but we are making immense progress in that direction to avoid any of those possibilities in the near future. But in our system, we also account for something called an AI trap. Like, how do you make sure that if you have set up a strong AI loop to find the data, to find insights, and to find predictive behavior, how can you make sure that you're not falling into a trap? So loop runs in a cycle, right? It's like a mice running on a wheel. If it doesn't know that it's a trap, it'll keep running continuously and you will never know it's a trap. It's the same use case here, where you do not know it's a trap until you start looking for it. So number one point in the AI trap is garbage in, garbage out. I think this is, again, going back to first principles. If your data is inaccurate, if your data is not coming from all possible sources, if your data is not clearly depicted and not clearly laid out for your LLMs can understand, then it's garbage in, garbage out. You will never be able to get the right information, because that's when your models will start hallucinating. It'll start making up use cases. It'll start making up user behaviors just to give you an answer back. So that's the first important thing. Your data has to be always of the best quality and also large enough so that you can make sense of it. It can never be garbage in, garbage out. The second is correlation and causation. I think these two topics are often confused when we talk about product development. Like a basic example that I can give you is, if you have an app, often people think that if you send a notification, the user spending time on the app increases. It could be true, it may not be true, right? Say, for example, in the same in the same scenario, the other possibility is that you have 10,000 users who really love your product, and they also subscribe to your notifications, but they come to your platform anyway. So notifications does not have a direct impact on your time spent on the app, but you might believe that it is. So that's why it's very important to understand the difference between correlation and causation. What is causing the action for the user to take, and what is happening just because that's how the user journey behaves, right? That's very important. The third point is blind spots in data can lead to skewed insights. Again, blind spots is important where if you have a lot of spam attack, if you don't have the right measures taken for spam and hacking in your system and architecture, then it's possible that your data is skewed, and hence it goes back to the point number one, which is garbage in, garbage out. So it's always important to make sure that you're covering for all those blind spots. And the last thing, AI is not equals to human as of today. It's smart, yes. It again depends on the product teams and the builders and the entrepreneurs on how you use them. It goes back to the same point of domain knowledge and expertise. If you're not able to interpret the data in the right way, the insights in the right way, and action them in the right way, you cannot really blame the AI models for giving you the wrong information in the first place. So that's pretty much it as what we do at JellyBean. And I would be happy to take any questions if you have. But I strongly believe it's a great time for us to be building products, because the best product teams don't just use AI to take answers, they ask the right questions. So like I said, it's not about what answers you get from your models and stuff, it's about what questions you ask. So that's my time. Any questions? Yes, please.
Okay, either way works. Cool, thanks a lot. And most of this is pretty clear and straightforward, but I think the key question for me is, how do you streamline different data sources into a data pool? Because in the old world, it would be like a data lake, we're having all the sources, but then still you need to feed this data into your AI model, your large language model, to be relevant. How do that part? That was a bit short for me.
Yeah, I mean, the most basic way of doing it, the way we have done it in the past is, if we have an app, we basically download the entire sort of reviews from it, and we just feed it to our model. Something as simple as that. Or we build our own automated systems where we have API integrations that directly goes to our database, and it feeds into our LLM APIs. So there are multiple ways to doing that, and there are multiple platforms that make it possible today. So one platform, if I remember it correct, we use something called segments.io, which allows us to connect different APIs and information from different sources, including platforms like Google Play Store, App Store, and stuff like that, and including your own app SDK, which can streamline a lot of the data inflow. And there are multiple other solutions out there now, which makes it easier. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Hello, I'm Margaret. Basically, I'm a software quality assurance, but I was wondering of your presentation. And then you just mentioned that we need to test and validate before we building the product. But what if, as in our company, our startup, there are so many features or product that we need to build it immediately? So how the AI can cover the process of testing and validate the idea before building it, because we don't have so much time to proceed. Thank you.
Got it. So, I mean, honestly, it looks different at different stages of the startup itself. So if you have your core product that you've already figured out, okay, this is your core product, and you already have a lot of users using those products, then I think the number one thing that I look at is, in all products, there are probably one or two features that most of the users use repeatedly, right? And it's very important to understand why those users use those features and build your hypothesis based on that. So that's number one, because it's again goes back to the same thing of how well do you understand your user. So if a user is using XYZ, there's a reason why they're using XYZ and not ABC, right? So if you understand why they use XYZ, that's number one. And then you can use a lot of different models. Like we personally use a lot of Claude and Perplexity in our teams, where we sort of brainstorm with the AI. So we'll give this information to the AI saying we have 100 customers, 90% of them use XYZ, but we are trying to build new features, which is say 1 to 3, right? Give us ideas of all the possible things that we should consider, right? Always use AI as brainstorming, because it'll give you ideas and stuff that majority of the times what we have seen is even your team cannot give you those ideas. So that's a great way of making sure that you're on the right path. The third thing is testing and validation. What I would do is, if you already have users, you would ask them what are the features that they're looking for. It's a very common thing you will see for any product. If you go onto the dashboards of any of the products, you'll always see sort of a feedback button or help us build the next 10 features and stuff like that, right? Including Canva. They always do this. And there's a reason for that, because you're trying to understand what users are interested in, and you make sure that you build your products and features based on the user needs again. And the last thing that I would say is, there are ways to test stuff. Like, say, for example, if you are trying to build a feature where where users can deploy something on a new platform altogether, right? Like when we built our gaming startup, we were trying to integrate with different gaming engines like Unity and Unreal and all those places, but we did not have a direct integration with them, but we still marketed for a week, and we tried seeing how many people click on that button, even if it does nothing. There's an option on the deployment stage where we give them these 5 options. Out of that, only 1 option works, 4 doesn't. But we still track how many people click on different things, and we try to hypothesize based on that. If more people are clicking on Unity and not on Unreal, then we know people are actually first preference is Unity. Even if it doesn't work, it's okay. Like for a week, it's okay. You can take that much time to understand what your user needs so that you're able to build a feature that actually solves the problem. So we do a lot of interesting hacks like this. Again, everything that I'm talking about goes back to the first principles of understanding what you're trying to do. You break it down to the core of your problem, and you do different permutation combinations to find what your user actually needs, and then build accordingly. Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Just a quick question. So the best ideas have the harshest critiques. Now, how do we set these language models we use to be our harshest yet best critiques for our ideas? Thank you.
Wow, that's more of a philosophical question, but then I'll try and answer it. I think I do not think LLMs are there yet where it can be your harshest critique, right? Because it's still feeding off based on the information that it already has, which comes from human beings in the first place. So which is why we all talk about that new ideas probably will never come from an LLM, because we still need human brain to think of new ideas and come up with them so that the tools can make them efficient to execute. So I do not think it can be your harshest critique, but it can be a critique in the sense where if you have an idea, you can have, so what we do is we do custom GPTs within our system, and we set strong guardrails where we dictate how we want the GPT to respond back, right? So we will sort of give this similar prompt engineering to the GPT where we tell them that this is how we want you to behave. If you follow like any individual in real life, say Bill Gates, for example, right? Tell the model to think like Bill Gates, talk like Bill Gates, and find permutation combinations and critique my idea based on how Bill Gates would. Right? So I would do this exercise with multiple things. So if in real life, if you would want to pitch an idea to say Elon Musk, talk to a GPT, custom GPT, try to train it on Elon Musk's user behavior and the way he talks and his ideas, and try to use that, and I'm sure you will find some interesting stuff out there. But I will not depend on it again because, like I said, it's a philosophical question. It can give you a good or a bad answer. So yeah, I hope that answers, and that's our time as well. So thank you so much for listening in. Thank you for all the questions. It's been a pleasure. Thanks to Tech in Asia for hosting this, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon as well. Thank you.